Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host as always. Joining me is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing today?
Doing very well. Better than Colorado's doing, that's for sure. Steven, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's been funny to watch my two teams be polar opposites of each other. Utah cannot move the ball at all. They don't know how to play offense, and the Chargers don't know how to stop other teams from moving the ball because they don't know how to play defense. So it's been fun to watch the two be polar opposites. In all seriousness, doing good. It's starting to really feel like fall up here in Fresno, which is great. I hate the summers, but I love the fall and winter up here. So it's good weather. Going to Utah for my brother's wedding. Shout out Mike and Haley. Congratulations. Next week to see some actual fall weather, and I'm really excited about that. And for the wedding too, obviously.
Yeah, that too. Congratulations in advance. That's awesome. Obviously, just got married. It's great. It's the best day ever. So hopefully they have a great day as well.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So we have unfortunately a lot to get into from a health perspective today. Before we dive into everything, want to send our thoughts, prayers, condolences to the Kendricks family. Eric Kendricks posted on Instagram last night that his father has passed away. Unclear when exactly that happened and what kind of impact that has had on Eric Kendricks' ability to play football. But listen, man, like he's his father, and like I imagine that Eric's going through a lot right now. I imagine the whole family's going through a lot right now. I don't know any details or anything like that, but sending some well wishes, condolences to the Kendricks family. I can't imagine trying to like focus on playing football while losing your father, let alone like functioning as a normal adult. So sending positive vibes their way.
Yeah. Sometimes as fans, we need the reminder of that these players are very much so human, and there's a lot of things going on beyond what we see them do for 3 hours on a Sunday and at practice, and that's it. They go home, they have lives. They lose, they have family to go home to, and maybe some problems to go home to. And unfortunate things like this, it's awful. I can't imagine my dad passes away. I'm not going to work for 5 years. I mean,
I mean,
there's
we
just
we get like bereavement leave, like we can take work
yeah.
off. Like these
hmm
guys, it's like gotta go play football now.
Right, and I'm sure there's a portion of the fan base that if he did take time off, they'd go, well, you got to be out there for your team. Like the stresses of having to do this job while dealing with something like that are unimaginable. So
Yeah.
again, thoughts, condolences, everything to that family, to Eric Kendricks. We interviewed him, didn't talk about his dad, but we asked about him making the perfect elephant noise, and he credited having a great mom that was able to do that. And so I think between that, if that's the same kind of relationship he had with his dad and them being that close, I can't imagine. I can't imagine it. And best of luck to him and his family getting through this and then just playing through it.
Yeah, he posted an Instagram story that his dad was never as into cars as he was, but he was into them with Eric. Like it was a thing
Cool.
between the two of them. Even though his dad was not like a super big car guy like Eric is, so it seemed like a great dad. The Kendricks family is obviously huge here in Fresno. A lot of my coworkers and things like that reached out to me. They were the ones who actually pointed it out to me that Eric had posted about it. So again, could not imagine going through that and then having to continue playing football. So sending condolences, well wishes. Hopefully everything is going as well as it can right now for the Kendricks family. Another scary situation. What a couple of 24 hours for this has been for the Chargers. Corey Linsley dealing with a non-emergent heart-related medical issue. The Chargers reporting that yesterday. He will be placed on injured reserve today. The good thing is that this doesn't seem like it's life-threatening at the moment for Corey Linsley. He obviously popped up on the injury report on Wednesday, but he is continuing to work with doctors and get a true proper diagnosis and treatment. But the good news is that it doesn't seem like this is life-threatening at the moment. Obviously, hope that it does not become that at any point for Corey Linsley, and similar to Eric Kendricks, like right now, Corey's health is bigger than football. We will talk about some of the football ramifications, but again, thoughts, well wishes to the Corey Linsley family as he deals with this. Anytime that you hear the words non-emergent heart-related medical issue, that was a big, a scare for me. Just like as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like Corey is okay. Bridget Condon said that he's in good spirits, but still, man, scary situation for Corey Linsley.
Yeah, the heart, I mean, the body in general, it's amazing how fragile we can be and our bodies can be, where we take the next day for granted, or we assume our health is going to be consistent, and we have years and years and years until something pops up. I don't want to speculate on what this is in particular. Obviously, it's related to his heart.
Yeah.
Don't know beyond that. And then thankfully, it's currently not an emergency situation. But yeah, man, heart stuff is no joke. And I don't care if this is the last time he's played. I would love to see him play more, of course, but take care of you. You know, your family. You know, you see the Linsley family. You know, I think his wife made a tweet as well about him being just a great, you know, father, human being, teammate, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. You know, my dad suffered an aortic dissection like 5 years ago. And if he didn't go to the hospital, I'm not going to the game with him tomorrow. You know, this stuff is so fragile. There are so many things that could happen just like that. And sometimes it doesn't matter what your age is. You know, this is a athletic guy, high paid guy, by all accounts, has been fine, and now has this issue. It's really unfortunate, whatever it is. And again, hoping for nothing but the best long term for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary situation. You know, my mother-in-law has had a stroke before, and like if they had not recognized it instantly, like same kind of conversation, right? So like anytime you have these kind of scares, it's just you have to act on it immediately. You have to take every kind of precaution. And credit to the Chargers for just like immediately like giving him time, you know. So in the short term, potentially the long term, Will Clapp will be the starting center for the Chargers. Corey Linsley is going to be placed on injured reserve later today, probably in the next couple hours. I assume Dean Marlowe will be taking his spot on the active roster. They already have elevated him twice. So one more elevation would have meant that they would have had to sign him on the 53-man roster anyway. And so now Dean Marlowe will potentially take that spot, potentially start tomorrow for the Chargers as well, which is another situation we can get into. But what are your thoughts as we transition into this period with Will Clapp as the starting center for the foreseeable future?
Geez, how do I say this? I think Will Clapp is a fine backup, and I think that he is a backup, and we do need to understand that this is no longer Corey Linsley out there. Linsley didn't start the year super hot in terms of pressures, although that's more by his standard than just being bad. It was just, you know, we're used to seeing 0.1 pressures per game, and now it's been, you know,
he's still a top 10 center. We're just used to him being like the top one.
Right, exactly. So do need to manage, you know, I guess expectations. It's not going to be perfect. The issue really is not this game, nor is it the following week. It's the next two after that, where you're playing the Chiefs and the Cowboys, and it's tough. The margin for error for the Chargers right now, especially on offense, is so small. You know, Herbert is not a winner because he can't pull a 7th touchdown drive, you know, in the final minutes of the Dolphins game, or 6th touchdown drive or whatever. And he's not a winner because of that. The margin for error is so small, and I mean, the defense has to pick it up. You know, I don't know how much better the offense can get, especially with Linsley out. So the defense really needs to pick it up, because you go play the Chiefs, you go play the Cowboys, you're now scratching and clawing and fighting for every point you can get. And you can't just have the defense just, there's an 80-yard touchdown right after you drove and fought and clawed, you know, for 80 yards and 12 plays or whatever to get there. So it's a strange thing to think about that, right? Like it's about like the defense now having to step up with Corey Linsley out. But again, the margin for error is so small, and he's not going to be Corey Linsley. So hopefully the protection's figured out. I'm glad, as you pointed out, that Zion Johnson, Jamari Sully really stepped up last game. So I think just having that thrown at you is good. I don't recall how Will Clapp was when he was the starter going into a game last season, but I feel like generally, unless he was thrown in there, you know, mid-game like he was against the Chiefs, I think he was fine. So I think they'll be okay. But, I mean, don't get it twisted. The 2 weeks after the bye are going to be a bit rough.
Yeah, it's a huge loss. I mean, Corey Linsley is one of their 5 best players when he's healthy, in my opinion, even still, in kind of like a down year for him. You know, the good thing that makes me feel good about this situation is that Justin has taken a significantly larger role in setting protections. And in the past, it was all on Corey's plate. So when Corey was injured and Will Clapp comes in, and people need to remember that Will Clapp is also not a quote unquote natural center. Like he last year in the NFL was his first NFL season where he was playing center like primarily. You know, the Saints use him mostly as a guard. So he's learning how to play center while also trying to handle protections and replace Corey Linsley, who is an expert at protections. And so that was like the main issue last year when Will Clapp would come in, is that just like the overall protection plan would suffer. But now with Justin Herbert being able to take that bigger step with protections, I think they'll be able to manage it at a much higher level than they did last year. You also have to take into consideration that last year you had Matt Filer at left guard, and Matt Filer was basically not able to function. And one thing that did last year was that Will Clapp was basically helping Matt Filer on like every play. And you want to talk about like the Chiefs stuff, like wherever Matt Filer was, like that's where the Chiefs were sending pressures was Matt Filer and Will Clapp's direction. And it left Zion on an island super often when he was able to, once he was able to get into the swing of things, he was the guy who was setting handling the one-on-one portion of the interior spots. So you add in Jamari and Zion instead of Filer and Zion. You add in Justin Herbert taking on a bigger step in protections. I think Will Clapp will be fine relative to the scale. Like I said this on Twitter yesterday, and people were like, "You're really overvaluing Will Clapp's ability." I'm like, I'm not. Like my expectations are relative to what Will Clapp is. I think he is a fine backup center who will handle his business. But I think the Chargers are just in a better spot this year to deal with this kind of loss than they were last year. In a similar fashion to how we talked about the Mike Williams injury, having Quentin Johnson, Joshua Palmer, and these guys, I just think they're in a better spot to deal with it. But losing Corey Linsley is huge, 100%. I just think that they'll be okay relative to, that kind of injury.
Yeah. I listen, I hope it's not the entire season of this. Again, it makes things very difficult. What do you make of then who kind of fills in for Will Clapp's role as that extra guy? We've seen a bit of it with like Foster Sarah will go in and as the extra lineman, but never as that fullback Hulk package sort of type. So is that something that Heitmus would do instead? Or do you think they would feel better about McFadden there? I don't recall if we saw anything in the preseason that would indicate who would be the next guy to do that, if they do that at all.
No, I don't think they did any of that in the preseason. They did some, you mentioned, like Foster Sorrell coming in as a 6 offensive lineman kind of thing. I would think that it would be either Zach Bailey or McFadden. We'll see. Brendan Hymus is going to be active now, so they'll have to figure out who's going to be your inactive offensive lineman, because Hymus is going to be your center 2 now instead of center 3, and he's been the one that's been active. So either Zach Bailey or Jordan McFadden are going to be healthy scratches going forward. I would tend to think that Zach Bailey might have a little bit more trust just because he's like the veteran, but I don't know. I would think it would be one of those 2 instead of Hymus.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like the timing, and maybe it's too conspiracy of me, but like I'm just surprised that they kept Hymus, as a third center on your team, and then last week they signed Zach Bailey. Like,
yeah.
This is very conspiracy of me, so I'll just throw it out there. Do you feel that there was any potential indication of any of this before the season, and that this is something they needed more answers on, and so it was non-emergency and playable, but there was something maybe they needed to figure out? Again, it feels kind of conspiracy to say that, but like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm connecting things that don't need to be connected.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I mean, especially right away after, the illness pops up on Wednesday's injury report. Corey did have a good amount of veteran rest days in training camp, which is not abnormal. Like he had been doing that. Obviously, he had the knee tendonitis issue last year. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. I feel like if Corey was having a heart issue, we would have known about it before this week. I think this is something that's kind of spur of the moment, so to speak.
Yeah, makes sense.
Regarding the Jerry Tillery stuff, because people in my mentions were like, this is gonna be a Jerry Tillery revenge game. He had 6 pressures last year. He's basically an edge rusher for the Raiders now. Like he's not playing defensive tackle for them. So we'll see a lot of Rashawn Slater And so I'm not concerned at all about Jerry Tillery this week. Just throwing that out there.
I mean, I certainly hope not. And I think maybe, I'm guessing Raiders fans are overrating what happened last time, where I believe Hymas was guard.
Yes, because that's the other thing too. So Will Clapp was starting, and people are like, "Oh, Will Clapp gave a pressure to Jerry Tillery." He didn't play him. Like, if you look at that game, Will Clapp only allowed one pressure. Zion left for 2 drives, and in 9 snaps, Brendan Hymas gave up 5 pressures to Jerry Tillery. Like, it was Brendan Hymas playing out of position, playing in for Zion Johnson. Jerry Tillery's not a good player, but he's a player who can take advantage of a 3rd string guard or 5th string guard. So
that's definitely a way to put it. Yeah. Yeah.
The reviews not concerned about Jerry Tillery this week.
Yeah. Wow. What an endorsement. Let me see Jerry Tillery's run stop rate. I swear if it's top 5. Okay, it's not.
It's not. But also his pass rush win rate is lower than Nick Williams for the Chargers.
Okay, so Jerry Tillery's run stop rate is 71st out of 73. So on brand.
Yes.
Respectfully, sounds about right.
There were all these like training camp quotes about Jerry Tillery from the Raiders defensive staff, and I was like laughing so hard. They're like, "We feel great about where he's at. He can do so many different things. He's going to take more snaps against tackles for us this year." And I think he has like 2 pressures through.
Oh, please take a rep against Rashawn Slater.
Yes, please.
Please. I love, go for it.
Yes.
If you, I don't know. Listen, if you're a Raiders fan at this point, Jerry Tillery, I think, is second on your team in pressures. I guess you're grasping at straws at that point because your 1st round pick has 1 and the other guy has like 2. Sure. I guess he's been better than expected, which is great to hear, but
for sure
doesn't mean he's been good.
For sure. Circling back here, like from a football perspective for the Chargers, I am a little bummed just like from the team perspective, because I really thought that this offensive line would have the chance to be like a truly special top 5 unit. And you're talking about Slater, Zion, Clapp, Jamari, and Pipkins. That's still a really, really good unit. Like, if this were 3 years ago, losing Corey Linsley would have tanked the offensive line. But they're in such a better spot now that I still think that they're borderline top 10 unit. But it just sucks. You get 3 games out of a potential top 5 unit, and we'll see if Corey Linsley can come back. But it's a bummer, man. Like, this would have been the best offensive line in Chargers history, and it could still become that. But it just sucks to not be able to see that come to fruition very much.
Yeah, I'm assuming Corey would have figured things out in pass protection. Not that he was terrible, but again, just it's like point shaving just a little bit. You lose Mike Williams. Offense is still probably going to be pretty good. Herbert's still out there. Keenan's been great. Feel good about the rest of your receiving core, but things are just going to drop down a little bit. Maybe there's a couple of points there. Yeah. And now you lose Corey Linsley, and there's maybe a couple of points there, a point there, or whatever. 1 drive is killed now because of some mistakes. So, yeah, it's really unfortunate that the ceiling for this offense is currently taking pretty dramatic hits because of 2 losses so far.
Yeah, I mean, Corey and Mike, those are 2 of your 5 best offensive players. So, it's tough. It's tough. Mm-hmm. All right. We talked a lot about the safety room on Thursday night, so I don't want to revisit that too much, but Derwin James officially doubtful. Alohi Gilman is questionable. It sounds like Derwin, again, I'm not surprised. I don't think he's going to play. It sounds like Alohi is going to be like a true game time decision. He was, let me make sure I get this right. He was limited in practice yesterday, and Brandon Staley said that there's a chance that he is able to play. But like we mentioned earlier, if he's not, then it would be JT Woods also out. Forgot that was a thing.
Yeah,
with an illness. So if Alohi is able to play, you're looking at Alohi, Raheem Lane, and Dean Marlowe. I assume the Chargers will also activate AJ Finley, but hopefully Alohi's able to play.
Yeah, again, we were concerned about the safety depth. I didn't think we'd go through 2 and 3 in 1 week, and then 1's not going to play either. We'll see with Alohi, obviously, but I mean, did not practice. I'm honestly surprised he's even questionable, given what happened and starting with the way he did. So, Raheem Lane, Dean Marlowe, Godspeed, good luck. This is thankfully, looking at the injury report overall, this is a great game, I guess, to not have everybody healthy.
It's
and
not the
ready to
Cowboys
go.
or the Chiefs.
It's not the Cowboys or the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Patriots or whatever. So not a bad game, but I don't know, man. You hoped that. Look, I know the secondary wasn't great last week, but you can at least maybe start to say that is the day that maybe the corners started to get into a rhythm. I don't know. Michael Davis, you get what you get, and here you go. Maybe you'll get into a rhythm finally, and then you wipe out safeties 1 through 3, basically.
Yeah.
After that game, not because of that game, JT Woods being sick, but again, difficult situation for the secondary, where now their most consistent secondary group is potentially not playing. Like nobody's playing. I didn't know who D Marlowe was before they, respectfully didn't know who he was, and now he's starting. And Devontae Adams is here, and at least it's just Devontae Adams.
Yeah, this is 100% a game where you're in shell coverage the entire way, and you're just making things as simple as possible for these guys. So we'll see how that goes. Austin Eckler officially doubtful. Again, we've talked a lot about that. It sounded early in the week like maybe Austin would be able to give it a go. I'm okay with them giving him the bye week to get healthy. I know Joshua Kelly in the run game has kind of struggled a little bit, but I feel better about their chances this week. From the Raiders side, real quick, it's unclear if Jimmy G is going to be able to play. Dealing with the concussion, I have not seen him be cleared yet. My understanding is that you have to be cleared within 24 hours of the game. I don't know if that is accurate or not, but I believe that he does need to get cleared today if he is going to play. It's unclear who will be the starter if he is not able to play. Some people think it's going to be Brian Hoyer. By people, I mean like national reporters. Others think it's going to be Aidan O'Connell. Hopefully they choose Brian Hoyer.
I know you just had 2 members on to talk about the Raiders. Did they give an indication of who they thought it would be?
They both thought it would be Hoyer, although they both are hoping that they wise up and play Aidan O'Connell.
So Hoyer it is.
Yeah. And then Max Crosby, too. I think this is worth mentioning. He's dealing with a knee injury. He was a limited participant in practice on Wednesday and Friday. He did not practice on Thursday. I still expect Max Crosby to play. But if he's a little bit banged up, I think that takes some pressure off of Trey Pipkins. By all means, you still double him. You still chip him. I watched their game against the Steelers on All 22 and was shocked at how often the Steelers just gave Max Crosby like a free runway. And I'm like, this is one of the best edge rushers in the league. Like, what are you doing? He's their only player on defense. So, the game plan is pretty simple. Slide protection his way, double team him, chip him. This is probably a game where Trey McKitty plays a little bit more just as like some extra protection help. But the good news, like as Kevin Kernick points out, you have Rashawn Slater on the other side. You don't need to worry about chipping 2 edge rushers. So Trey Pipkins, for what it's worth, only allowed 4 pressures last year in week 1 against the Raiders. And I think Trey is objectively a better football player at this moment in time. Max Crosby is great. He's going to get Trey, just like Jalen Phillips did a couple of times. But I feel okay about where the Chargers can kind of manage Max Crosby this year, especially in comparison to years past.
Yeah, I'm very curious how they'll utilize the run game. I think last time you watched them in week 1, and it was, okay, we're going to put Trey McKitty on that side, and we're going to run it Max Crosby, and it didn't work. Like, it never worked. It was pretty awful.
No,
and I get it. Like,
Max Crosby.
Yeah, don't do that anyway. You need to have a good blocking tight end. It's rough. It's tough sledding for anybody. So Curious what Kellen Moore does this time around. I can't imagine there's this really strong desire to run right at him. Go test the other edge rushers or Jerry Tillery playing edge. Go after those guys instead.
Yeah. All right. So that's the injury stuff. Again, a much lengthier injury report for the Chargers this week. Tyler, let's do our prize pick segment of the week. Again, you can go to prizepicks.com/guilty and use the code guilty for a deposit match up to $100. It's been a great partner for us to work with. The app is super user friendly. It's an easy app to use. You can choose just Chargers games. You can choose NFL games. They have different kind of variations of winnings based off of how many players you choose. So definitely encourage you guys to go check it out. It does help support the show as well. If you go and do use the app, this isn't just like we get paid because we're talking about them. Like, we need you guys to go and use the app. So it's been fun to see other people use it. We encourage everybody to go use it and make yourself some money this weekend. So Tyler, who is your favorite Chargers related prize pick this week?
Give me Josh Palmer more, 43.5 receiving yards. I feel like that could even be picked up in one play. It almost was last week on two separate ones. Yeah. And now you're looking at a player who's going to step in, I don't want to say into the Mike Williams role, but into the wide receiver 2 role. And against a secondary that's, I think rightfully so, going to be focusing on Keenan Allen. In theory, Josh Palmer is the guy who's going to be the most free to do what he wants. Quentin Johnson, I think, could we very well see a 100-yard Quentin Johnson game? Sure. Could we see Darius Davis gives a 60-yard bomb? Sure. But I think in terms of the floor of the targets, the chemistry, and what we've seen from Josh Palmer as a receiver, I think 43.5 yards, that being where it is, I'll take the more on that one.
Yeah, that one feels right. I think, Joshua Palmer is going to get like with the Chargers go 12 personnel, I think that's going to be Palmer out there more so than Quentin. Like, I think he's going to get targets. But like we talked about on Thursday, Quentin could certainly, pop off a couple of big plays and outdo him in yardage. So that's a good one. I'm taking Gerald Everett's line here. I think this is a spot where Gerald Everett kind of becomes a bigger factor. He's been getting, 4 to 6 targets over the last few weeks, and he's so hard to tackle over space. I do not trust the Raiders safety room to really, do damage against Gerald Everett. So his line on Prize Picks is 32.5 receiving yards. That to me is an easy more. And I'm pretty happy with Everett and Josh Palmer still kind of being a little bit under the radar this week.
Yeah, that's 32.5. I mean, he's almost been around that the last 3 weeks. So let's see, week 1, 21, then 47, then 30. But like last week, I don't know exactly when the timing was, but he had 6 catches last week, which was a bit of a bigger day in terms of catches for Gerald Everett. I'm curious how much of that was after Mike Williams got hurt. So yeah, I think that's a pretty solid line there. And the good thing about that one is this is a player who can take 1 target, 2 targets, 3 targets. Yeah. I think he is currently averaging 6.5 after the catch. So it's not like you require him to get, 3 catches for 13 yards. And then that's it. He can pick up the yards after the catch if needed and kind of really help you get there on the more. So I like that one.
Yeah. Not a ton of Raiders lines this week. Again, I don't even think Jimmy G is on there. I don't see Devontae Adams on here either. But Josh Jacobs, Josh Jacobs is at 0.5 pass plus rushing plus receiving touchdowns. I do think this is kind of a get right game for Josh Jacobs. I feel like he was pretty close to popping off some big runs this past weekend against the Steelers. So unfortunately, I do think Josh Jacobs is going to have himself a good game. I like that line from a perspective. And then league-wide, Josh Allen against the Dolphins. His passing line is at 268.5. This feels like a very quintessential Josh Allen go-off game to me. So I like that line as a more. Anything else that you like this week, Tyler?
Yeah, Joe Burrow, 1.5 passing touchdowns against Tennessee as a more. I like that one. I know the offense has not been good, but I think that's reflected in the line right now, 1.5 passing touchdowns. And I think that this Tennessee secondary is not great, has not been great. By EPA per play, they're not great. And I think that the Bengals finally start to get things rolling. So I think that, again, the line is at 1.5. So I think getting the more there feels pretty safe. Cortland Sutton, more at 55.5 receiving yards. Do I love Denver and Russell Wilson? Not necessarily. Is Chicago a terrible defense right now? Yeah. And Cortland Sutton was very much so involved even in their blowout loss. So I think that at 55.5 yards against a garbage defense of the Chicago Bears in terms of the secondary and how they've been playing, I like that one.
Yeah. That's a good call for sure. All right, let's get to our weekly picks here. It's been a tough start to the season for all of us regarding the Chargers picks. So hopefully we can get back on track this week. As it currently stands, Tyler and Alex Insdorf are tied for the lead right now at 7 and 5. If you're just joining the show, we do this every single year. The losers all have to buy a jersey of choice for the winners. So right now it's a bit of a struggle for yours truly. Again, I'm 0-3 for the Chargers, so that has not been great for me. Arjun at 6 and 6, Alex Katzen at 5 and 7. So trying to turn it around this week.
Yeah, you got it, man.
I'm trying to pick like different picks every week because you know, like there's similar picks every single week, and I'm like, okay, like I need to try and be different, but sometimes you just got to pick the smart ones, and that's a tough thing for me to realize sometimes.
Well, I think you and I have been either fourth or fifth in some order to make these picks too, and we try to mix it up a little bit, not
Yeah.
pick the favorites. I think Alex last week took both the Eagles and the Cowboys. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, now granted the Cowboys ended up losing, but I would have certainly taken the Cowboys over the Cardinals. So,
Yeah.
you know, you and I are trying to mix it up a little bit, let these guys go and then not pick the same, you know, not just pick the easy ones.
Yeah, I saw this thing about ESPN survivor pools being like 90% done already because so many people have been waiting to pick the Cowboys against the Cardinals last week. So yeah, that was a tough loss to stomach if you're a bettor. So all right, Arjun has the 49ers as his favorite this week over the Arizona Cardinals, who are like shockingly playing really tough so far this year. Our guy Kaiser White had a game-winning interception last week. He has the Baltimore Ravens as the underdog against the Browns, who have the league's best defense right now. The Vikings, who are playing the Panthers, I believe. And then he has the Chargers winning 24-20. Alex Katzen also has the Vikings. He has the Seahawks over the Giants. He has the Houston Texans as his underdog, or as his either or pick. I think the Texans are playing the Colts, I believe. And then he has the Chargers winning pretty big, 30-21. Alex Insdorf has the Chiefs beating the Jets on Sunday Night Football, where Taylor Swift is going to be attending. And I think we're going to get like 75 mentions of her on Sunday Night Football. So prepare yourself if you're not a Taylor Swift fan. He has the Miami Dolphins over the Bills, and then the Seahawks over the... Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading his wrong. He has Houston over the Steelers, and then Denver over the Bears. And then he has the Chargers winning 27-24.
I love the Denver over Chicago one. Like what a fart in the elevator of a game to have to pick. And he has right here the little toilet bowl emoji thing up here for us. Yeah. That is something. Taylor Swift. Hey man, whatever brings on new fans, it's awesome, I guess. I'm curious what happens when the inevitable breakup occurs in terms of fandom and backlash. You think NFL fans are passionate? I think Taylor
Swift fans are different.
Yeah, I think her movie of the concerts is breaking records in terms of pre-box office sales. So those Swiftie fans are going to be interesting to say the least. And I
think it's good for the sport. Like it's bringing more attention to the sport, and it's certainly good for Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce and their podcast and Travis Kelce's merchandise sales. And but it's, you know, Chris Collinsworth talking about Taylor Swift on Sunday Night Football is going to be some very cringeworthy commentary this weekend.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, right. I can't wait to get okay. Anyway, my picks. San Francisco over Arizona. No one had picked this week, so I'm like, okay, I'll finally take the easy one, it feels like. San Francisco over Arizona. But like you said, Arizona's defense is playing pretty tough. You know, again, they won a really good game last week against an injured Cowboys team. Miami over Buffalo as the underdogs. I don't expect Miami to put up 70, but they can certainly put up 30-something, and I think that's pretty good. And then either or, I went with Seattle over the Giants because I didn't want to pick another one. So Seattle over the Giants seemed like a thing I could pick that would make some sense. As far as the Chargers game, I do have them winning. I kind of go back and forth on what the score is going to be. I would honestly change it to a lower score if Hoyer is officially announced. I guess to a certain extent, O'Connell as well. I fear the unknown a bit more there. But I will go Chargers winning. Nope. W. And I'm going to have them winning only 24-17. I think these games are always closer than everyone wants them or thinks they should be. I've been to enough of these games and watched enough of these games against the Raiders where every single time, it doesn't matter. I've seen Terrell Pryor take the Chargers to the end of the game. He ended up being a receiver for Washington. Right. So, like, you know, anything can happen. Rivalry games are just a bit different. And I think this Chargers offense is still trying to figure things out. 17 is a very low score in terms of the Raiders offense compared to what the Chargers have been doing on defense. If your guy's not playing, you know, it's not going to be great. And frankly, I haven't seen a whole lot from Jimmy G that suggests it's going to be wow, look at this game. So I'm not worried about the Raiders offense. I am just continuing to be worried about the Chargers defense. And I think if the Chargers have to win a shootout, and I guess there are some injuries involved here, so maybe it's more understandable, but if the Chargers have to win, 30-27, I almost feel like you can just call it a season. If Brian Hoyer is putting up 27 something points on you.
Yeah.
So I really hope that the Chargers, granted with injuries, can hold Brian Hoyer and the Raiders to, at least under 24. Hope it's not a high scoring game.
Brother, if they give up 27 points to Brian Hoyer,
this game's over. It's over, dude.
Yeah, if Brian Hoyer is starting, there's zero reason that the Raiders should score more than 17 points. I think that the Chargers are going to win, but I'm going to fall on the sword this week and make sure that we're not 5-0 on the Chargers.
Are you going to pick them to lose?
Just because, like, I am a believer, like, I'm not superstitious by any means, but like the picks I think matter, and like I'm debating right now, like, because every time like NFL Network goes like full on one team, the team always loses. Like, I'm debating right now, falling on the sword and making sure that we're not 5-0. But what do you think about that? Are you a believer in the pick superstition or no?
No, I mean, I picked them to win last week, and they did end up actually finally winning.
But last week we were split. Last week we were split. Week before that, we all had the Chargers winning and they lost. Week before that, we all had the Chargers winning and they lost.
Okay,
so I'll let the chat decide. Are you superstitious about picks mattering? Should I go for the clean sweep because I do think the Chargers are going to win? But chat, let me know. Like, am I crazy? Am I the only one who thinks like this?
Here's my thing. I guess you could do it now, but that because we'll save our reverse mojo for the Chiefs and Cowboys games where I'm definitely picking them to lose. So,
okay, the chat is saying do not do the clean sweep. Okay, yeah. So I'll say if theoretically if the Raiders were to win, it's like on a last second field goal. I'll say like 25-24, like that would be like how the Raiders win. So I'm gonna fall on the sword. I'm gonna take the loss in the picks. You're all welcome. I'll continue to be in last place, and the Chargers will win tomorrow. So you're welcome.
Okay, so you're gonna have them officially winning what score?
25-24.
Chargers. Or are you taking it?
I'm avoiding the clean sweep. So
you're avoiding it. Okay.
I am saying I am picking the Chargers, but officially on the sheet, I'm saying Raiders to avoid the clean sweep.
All right.
So you're all welcome.
Yeah, the Chargers beat Brian Hoyer and the Raiders. It's because of Steven. Thank him in advance. And if they lose to Brian Hoyer and the Raiders, I'll tell you what, man, you're doing this show solo next week.
Again, I think the Chargers are going to win, but I am superstitious about picks, and every time all five of us agree, the opposite result happens. So I'm falling on the sword. Chorizo picked the Raiders to win 3-2. Oh man. No, I'm surprised that there aren't more people who think like this. Like, I don't know. I feel like picks matter. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We only ever hear about when we're wrong about these picks, never when we're right about these picks. It's like, oh, you picked them to lose. You were wrong.
Yeah.
I pick them to win like 90% of the time, and I never hear
it. Yeah, this is just more for fun. Like, I love NFL football, and I like having competition with my friends. So it's a good way to do that. All right, before we continue, I got to give a quick shout out to Little Caesars. After the shout out to Little Caesars, we'll take some questions, so feel free to start firing away. But Little Caesars is the official pizza sponsor of the NFL and the Los Angeles Chargers. We invite you to go take advantage of their kickoff special that happens 1 hour before NFL games start kicking off. It is the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, and they have a great pizza portal pickup for quick delivery or for quick pickup. My personal favorite is the pepperoni and sausage green pepper combination. Crazy Bread always hits as well. So go check them out. Again, that's Little Caesars, official pizza sponsor of the NFL and the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, get yourself some pizza, man. If you're going to stress eat watching the Chargers, go get some Little Caesars pizza.
Yeah. All right, we'll start with this one from Demetrius. J.C. Jackson is going to be active this week. Dean Leonard is doubtful. So that's another layer to this kind of conversation, too. We'll see if they elevate Matt Hankins from the former Iowa corner from the practice squad. Any expectations that he starts? What's kind of your vibe right now for JC this weekend?
I don't know, dude. Like what?
Super weird.
I really don't know. What are my expectations? That I'll be confused. That, my expectation is, okay, what do I think probably wouldn't happen, so it'll happen? He goes out there and he starts over Michael Davis, which I can almost understand. JC Jackson's cap situation isn't great, and they could cut him post June 1st and save a bit next year. But like, he is currently on the books, and they did start him in several occasions over Michael Davis. So I could see them going, look, we got to figure this out. So let's see what you got. But then, okay, we have the bye week. So do we play the bye week? Do we let him figure things out? Jameson Omar talked about JC's probably at like 80% to 90% right now. He's definitely not 100%. It's a miracle that he's even out there. So do you play to get him in better shape and to get used to things and start, because part of it's such a mental aspect too. He has to learn to retrust that injury or that knee again and retrust that he can cut and plant and move like he hopefully was before. I don't know. If they didn't name Jaw the starter at star, then I would honestly think that JC and Davis are your outside corners and Zon's your slot guy, and you just roll with that the rest of the way. But they didn't do that, and they healthy scratch JC. So again, my answer for this is honestly, I have no idea.
I unfortunately think we're going to see a bit of a rotation again this week. I interviewed Asante Samuel Jr. yesterday, and he seemed to imply that he's an outside corner only right now. That they really trust him out there more so than they trust him in the slot. That was not his implication. That was Brandon Staley's implication. The Dean Leonard injury here, I think, is an underrated underlying story because Dean is the special teams player, and Jasir Taylor hasn't been playing as much special teams because he's been a starter. Well, now you need Jasir to play special teams because you're not playing JC Jackson on special teams. So I kind of expect JC to rotate in with Michael Davis, maybe Asante Samuel Jr. get some more slot reps this week. I unfortunately think we're going to be unhappy with how the rotation goes this weekend. But yeah, I expect JC to play. I don't expect him to start, but I do think he plays and sees some snaps this week.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how they go about. I haven't watched film of the Raiders and their passing game, but again, the numbers are just, 40 receiving yards for Renfro. Was it 3 for Mayer and like 2 for the other guy? It's just, I'm curious how they go about doing this.
It's pretty wild to watch their offense on tape because there are times where those guys are open and Jimmy G does not care. That ball is going to Devontae 9 times out of 10, I feel like. And there were, I forget who kind of coined this term, but there's this phrase out there called hospital balls. Like there are times where Devontae's running into both safeties and his own defender, and Jimmy's just like, yep, Devontae. So it's pretty wild to watch how Devontae centric it is right now. There have been times, like I said, that Hunter Renfrow is just like chilling in the slot open, and Jimmy just does not get there. So it's if there were ever a game to double team anybody, it's this one against Devontae Adams. Yeah,
with Dean Marlowe help over the top. Didn't think I'd be saying that by week 4.
Me neither. Again, respectfully, did not know he existed until they signed him. Nimasabe, with Williams out, how big of a role will Davis and Guyton, when he returns, have going forward? Darius Davis has basically been seeing about 10 snaps a game. They'll pitch him the ball or hand him the ball every other game at this point. They're not throwing him the football very much. They have been using him as kind of like the Tyreek Hill cheat motion player. So they'll line him up like in line and quick motion him out kind of thing. He ran a wheel route a couple of times and was open on one of them for what it's worth. But I don't think we see Davis's role increase that much. I think this is like firmly Quentin Johnston and Joshua Palmer see a bigger increase with some more 12 personnel kind of thing.
Yep, I completely agree with you there. I am very curious what happens with Guyton, and I'm curious how they decide to change. Like if Kellen Moore decides to change things up a little bit, we've seen a lot of this horizontal work with Mike Williams, and obviously Keenan Allen. I wonder how much things change when he returns. There's just an aspect of trust that, again, Herbert has. The reason Guyton's on the team is because of Justin Herbert. Honestly, the trust that they have, the rapport that they have. Herbert will throw it down the field to Jalen Guyton. And I'm just curious how much things change when he returns. So I don't think Davis's role changes. Quentin Johnson will obviously play a lot more, but I am curious how much more decides to change things, especially with some of the teams they're playing coming up.
Yeah. Okay. ET44A. What's been the biggest difference we're seeing with Michael Davis this year? Last year he was amazing. What are your thoughts here about Michael Davis?
I don't know if this is true or not, but he just feels a step behind. It almost feels like something is physically not as like there are moments where he had to chase a receiver last week against the Vikings, and he just flat out couldn't get there. And this is your 4-3 player, tall player, long strider. By all accounts, outside of Dean Leonard, your best athlete in terms of speed in the secondary, and he's just not getting there. And so I think it's a combination of that, some panic, sometimes just not playing correctly, the rotation, so many different things. But he definitely just seems out of sorts. There's not this flow state, I guess, when he used to play last year. Everything was just perfectly timed and in rhythm, press, move, whatever he had to do. It all looked under control, no matter who it was, Tyreek Hill or the worst receiver. Didn't matter. Always under control. This year just feels like, I don't know, things are a bit lost. I don't know if it's communication in the secondary, roles, the rhythm, something physically slowing them down. I don't know. But he just doesn't look quite the same in terms of the twitch, in terms of the long speed, and then just comfort just being there. But I don't know. It definitely is a surprise to see what's happening so far.
Yeah, coverage performance is pretty fluky sometimes. Like even if you look at high-end cornerbacks, it can be kind of rangy. Like AJ Terrell last year was pretty like he gave up a lot of yards last year. The year before that, he was pretty locked down. This year he's pretty locked down. So I think Michael Davis was due for some regression from last year, but at the same time, like I just don't feel the same kind of confidence from him at this point in time. Some of that could be the rotation. Some of that could be just kind of like the circumstances of the season, going up against Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson. Like some of that could be just who they're playing. So hopefully he can get back on track, because I think if you watched last year, like Michael Davis was the key for them getting back on track from a pass defense standpoint, what he was doing on a week-to-week basis. And I still firmly believe that if he doesn't get hurt against the Jaguars, that they win that playoff game. Because he was just that impactful to the way that they were using him and the scheme and everything. I've seen less press looks this year than at the tail end of last year. That could be something that's kind of maybe throwing him off a little bit. So I'd love to see him be able to get a little bit more physical going forward. But yeah, it's a tough spot, because I mean, we were advocating for a Michael Davis extension in the offseason, calling him an elite player at the cornerback position at the tail end of the season. And he's been really struggling. I think some of it is just like a lack of confidence right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think I know it wasn't a full starting slate for him last year, but I also feel like in some games to open the year, he wasn't quite that same guy. And it really almost took like a third of the year for him to really find his groove and then settle in that and then be elite the rest of the way. So maybe it's one, because he's rotating, and two, because I don't know, things need to get back into sorts. Because honestly, during training camp, he was freaking awesome. Like he was just dominating. Was fantastic in training camp. If it wasn't for Asante Samuel Jr. having an interception every 4 snaps, we'd be talking more about Michael Davis, who was really, really good. Yeah. So I don't quite know what happened, but I'm sure I feel the rotation and everything is just getting in his head just a little bit.
Yeah, I hope that this is kind of like a get right game for the corners. I am concerned about the safety group this game, obviously. I'm definitely concerned about Devontae Adams, but Jimmy G, Brian Hoyer, like they're going to give these cornerbacks some opportunities to make plays on the football. And hopefully this is a game where they can create some big plays and get into the bye week and then carry some positive momentum after that.
Mm-hmm.
I like this question from Chorizo. Under the radar matchup you're most excited to see this week?
Under the radar. I don't know. Stuff to tell when half your team is hurt. So who am I thinking of?
There.
Under the radar matchup. Under the radar is tough. Like I am personally looking forward to, or I'm going to be focusing on. Yes, of course, the secondary is the big story, but how do these two linebackers play now that Kendricks is back? I think Murray has stepped up pretty darn well in his absence. So given Kendricks is returning, and I don't think things were great week one, but given the circumstances of what's going on in his life, how does that go this week? So I don't know if that's underrated or overlooked, but I think that is something to keep an eye on because Murray's played so well. Do things not look so good with this duo reunited?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Every time I watch the Raiders tape, I selfishly love watching Josh Jacobs pass protect. And so, the Chargers use their linebackers blitzing quite often. Nick Niemann is actually I think third among linebackers in pass rush win rate right now. So that's been a treat to see. Kenneth Murray's obviously had some splash pressures, splash quarterback hits, but PFF hasn't classified them as wins per se. Obviously against the Titans, he basically had a free shot right away at Ryan Tannehill. So I think that's a good one, both from a run game perspective and also from a pass protection perspective, because Josh Jacobs is fantastic in pass protection.
Yeah, listen, good, awesome. I never knew that. So that's great.
Yeah, he's really good in pass protection. Let's see, under the radar, we've talked a lot about a lot of them.
Right.
Ryan Ficken versus DeAndre Carter. How about that one? DeAndre Carter obviously was one of the more efficient punt returners in the league last year. Kick returning was a bit of an issue. You don't have Dean Leonard this week, so he's been like your best gunner on special teams. So curious how Ryan Ficken just kind of approaches his former protege. And listen, man, Ryan Ficken is an amazing coach, so I expect him to have a plan for it.
Yeah, I almost talked about Daniel Carlson, but I don't really know if that's a matchup. I don't know how many times we're going to see a blocked field goal here. But yeah, no, I totally get it. I think Carter is at 23 yards per attempt in terms of kickoff returns.
Oh, cool. So he's 5 yards better than last year. Awesome.
Right, which, again, I have no idea why or what. I think the Raiders have had pretty decent special teams over the years. So, yeah, that's not a bad one.
Yeah. Let's see. LD Broom, great point here. No more big penalties on third down. They've been game changing. They really have. I don't know if this is true or not, but every time it happens, I feel like the other team goes to score. Like it just has that feel to it.
Yeah.
Right now, I think they're at 8 penalties on third down, and that's just some of that will just naturally happen, right? But it's been bad penalties too, just not smart football plays. So hopefully that is something that they work on. And Derek Lindsey took full ownership of it this week in his press conference. We have to coach them better. I have to do better. So I think that eventually this will correct course. But yeah, man, they're probably 2-1 without these penalties right now.
Yeah, easily. Yeah, even just penalties in general. I think you give up a pass interference, they get 3 in a game, you lose by 2. You have the roughing the passer on Sebastian Joseph Day, they get 7 in a game, you lose by 3. So those I don't know if it was third down or not, but they do have to be avoided. Hopefully, do you feel like Derwin is trending towards being a guy that the league is like, yeah, we're just going to call it more for him in particular?
I do, because he's so violent. Like when he gets home, it just, even if it's not like a true penalty, it looks that way live. Like I clipped out the penalty from this past one, and you clearly see him like turn his head and like lead with his shoulder. But Madison lowered his head, and it looked way worse than it was on film. So I think Derwin's just kind of have to like make an adjustment and play through this kind of thing. And it sucks because that would have been a huge play. You know, the one on Madison. The
Yeah.
one on was it Burks or was it Chris Moore? I forget. That one I do think was a legitimate like penalty, like definition of the rule. But this past one against the Vikings, I thought there was a clear like lowering of the shoulder, turning of the head, like textbook, like this is how I'm going to hit this guy, and they still called it just because Derwin is so big, so fast, and violent. So he's going to have to make an adjustment. It sucks, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Look at anybody know the USC score? I'm trying to look it up. USC, Colorado. Oh, well, Colorado's, it's 34-14, but
at least they've scored. Scoring. It was 21-0 when we started.
Yeah. 34 points in the first half. 36 more to tie Miami.
Frank Blakely, do you think the heavy emphasis on stopping the run has led to explosives in the pass game? SBJ's comment after the Titans game. I assume this is when Sebastian Joseph Day was saying that they didn't run for that many yards. What do you think about this?
I would have said honestly that the emphasis on stopping the run has led to maybe their pass rush hasn't been as strong. I think Khalil Mack, in particular, is clearly very much so all about stopping the run this year, primarily, and then being a pass rusher second. It seems like, and obviously Joey, you bulk up that much, it's because of this. So I would say maybe the pass rush rate has been down because of the emphasis on stopping the run, but not the explosives allowed by the secondary, which feels like communication, missed assignment, coaching, etc.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the explosive plays, it's a lot of bad angles, miscommunication. I mean, like if you watch the Justin Jefferson touchdown, like JT Woods, for whatever reason, is just like looking to the left and doesn't see Justin Jefferson coming across until the final moment. And then he takes a bad angle at that point. So there's been stuff like that. There's been miscommunication. There's been leverage mistakes. So I think that more is what the explosive in the pass game is about. I think that's a good point about the pass rushing, though. And, I think these edge rushers are really, really emphasizing the run game right now. And it's paying off like for them in that regard. But, at some point, Joey or Khalil probably needs to become a more effective pass rusher than Tuli, as much as like Tuli's a great story. At some point when these three all get healthy on the field together, I'm hopeful that like the pass rushing snaps get kind of divided up more equally. People are playing more fresh. There's more of a rotation, and all three of those guys can become more efficient pass rushers.
Yeah, for as great as Tuli has been, there's definitely a gear and a tier that Joey could be at and should be at when he's healthy. It's just different as a pure edge rusher. A lot of what Tuli does is awesome. They're using him as a chess piece, which is great. But I think in terms of I need to beat your tackle and sack the quarterback, that is still Joey's thing. So hopefully he can be, back to better.
Related, Khalil Mack obviously playing his former team. He had 3 sacks in week 1 last year. Does he get his first sack this week? Nibasabe asks.
Yeah. I just the tack. I mean, look, I think their line has been better than expected, but I just don't see a whole lot of, even just watching Jimmy G against the Steelers last week. Granted, that's TJ Watt and Highsmith that he's going against. Everything just seemed to tick slow, and I think his time to throw is at like 2.8 seconds, which I believe is the most of his starting career. So things are just taking a bit longer to develop, or he's holding on to it longer, and he looks a bit slower. Granted, it could be Hoyer this week. Which either way, that does to me indicate that this is probably the week Mac gets a sack, and like everyone's been saying, it's a revenge game sort of aspect.
Yeah, revenge game aspect. I think Colton Miller is a really good offensive tackle, but the one thing he's always been susceptible to is power rushers, and that's obviously what Khalil is. It's what he does best. So I do think that Khalil has himself a pretty good day. He's been, I know like people really freaked out about the ESPN win rate for him being 0 after 2 weeks. But he has been getting pressures. Like he has been like hitting the quarterback. It's just not super clean rushes at this point. I think we see Khalil have the best game of his season so far tomorrow. I think he's just due for that. He's at 15 pressures right now or something like that.
It's funny because the win rate is terrible, but you look at the numbers and it's like, oh, he has a lot of pressures. relative to compared to what I would have guessed. I can look it up. Give me 2 seconds. Khalil Mack has on the season 12 pressures and 1 sack.
Yeah, so 12 pressures across 3 games is pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's not 0% win rate for sure. So I think he's due for a good game tomorrow. All right, that's gonna do it for us today. Appreciate all the good questions. We had this one from Frank. I don't know if you want to address it. If you could ask Antonio Gates any questions, what would it be? What would you ask Antonio Gates?
How do you sustain a career of being a little bit slower and maybe not the athlete you once were, but how do you sustain your career late into your career and continue to be efficient? And I would specifically be asking that for Keenan Allen, who's on pace to pass Antonio Gates for a lot of records, except for touchdowns in the next few years.
That's a great question. That is a really good question. I would also say, how do I want to word this? Maybe just like red zone success. Like, what was the key to really becoming that lethal in the red zone? Like, how did you and Philip Rivers kind of develop that mind meld, and how did you, like, what was the process like of him becoming such a lethal red zone threat? Because obviously most touchdowns at the tight end position, but like yards wise, like he's still pretty down there in comparison to like Tony Gonzalez and stuff like that. So maybe some kind of like red zone question. Frank's a smart guy. You can kind of decipher that a little bit, but yeah, I've always been curious about just like the red zone stuff.
Yeah, I think the Chargers of the last couple of months or whatever, I feel like I'm seeing a lot more. Oh, here's this game. Here's this 3 touchdown game from Gates. I feel like I've seen more highlights of him, and I've been watching some older highlights with Gates and Rivers and those moments. Like, how did they get on the same page to the point? I mean, it is kind of like Mahomes and Kelsey, where there was just that clip we saw where he's like, yeah, Kelsey.
Yeah, just does what he wants. Yeah,
does what he wants. And I know he's going to do that. And so I just threw it. I know he's going to completely go to where the play is not supposed to go. And yeah, it's a touchdown. And I just feel like that was kind of the case with Gates, who, again, was 114 touchdowns, best most in NFL history. You get there by being good at that somehow. So yeah, asking how is a good one.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for us today. Hope you have a great rest of your Saturday. Hopefully your teams playing football today do well. Unless, BYU played last night, so we're good. Yeah, should be fun. So we'll be going live tomorrow night, probably around after Saturday Night Football. Give Tyler and everybody else some time to get home from the game. But we'll keep you posted exactly what time. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Appreciate the questions. We'll see you next time. As always, bolt up.